Hello, everyone. I'm Mr. Schroeder. I'm the current president of the Sandwich School Board, and it's my pleasure to read to you today Chapter 9 of Imagination According to Humphrey. My friend's imaginations were flying as well, all except for Joey's. He still spent more time staring at his notebook than writing in it. Believe me, I knew how he felt. Mrs. Brisbane was encouraging, but somehow she wasn't getting through to him. One day, the most important person at Longfellow School, our principal, Mr. Morales, came in to see how we were doing. He was wearing a tie with little pencils all over it. I hear you have a room full of authors here, he said. Mrs. Brisbane said, you're doing very well. He wandered up and down the aisles, looking at each notebook and making comments. When he read Small Paul's page about time traveling through space, he said, fantastic idea. He high-fived Sophie when he read about the parrots. He had something nice to say about everyone. Then he came to Joey. So what are you writing about? The principal asked. He couldn't really tell because Joey had covered his page with his arm. I'm off to a slow start, Joey said. Mr. Morales persuaded him to move his arm. He studied Joey's page. Keep going. I love your idea of flying to Africa. Joey muttered, thanks. I don't think he believed Mr. Morales, but our principal would never lie. What's this? Mr. Morales asked, nudging Joey's arm. On this page? Joey wrinkled his nose. Oh, just doodles. I'm always doodling. But they're very good, Mr. Morales said. They are very, very good. I like to fool around with drawing, Joey said, sitting up straight in his chair. You should illustrate your story, Mr. Morales said. Don't you think so, Mrs. Brisbane? Mrs. Brisbane came over to Joey's desk and looked at his notebook. I hadn't seen these. Mr. Morales is right. It's all right for us to draw pictures for stories, Thomas asked. Yes, Mrs. Brisbane said. I think it would be great. But this is a writing assignment, so you need to have words to go with the pictures. Joey seemed more interested. Mr. Morales looked at Rosie's notebook next. He smiled when he read what she'd written. Great description. Rosie's smile lit up the whole room. Then he talked to the whole class. Mrs. Brisbane and I have been talking, and we've come up with a big surprise for you when you finish your stories. That got my whiskers wiggling, and my friend seemed excited too. So do the best work you can, Mrs. Morales continued. You've got something big to look forward to. How big? I squeaked. As big as an elephant or a dragon? Mr. Morales heard me laugh. Oh, do you have a story idea, Humphrey? Yes, I do, I squeaked. Everyone laughed at that. I think I'd like to read your story, Mr. Morales said, acting as if he understood me. Suddenly I realized that as good as my story might be, no one would ever read it, and stories are meant to be shared. I hopped on my wheel and began to spin to shake off my disappointment. As soon as school emptied out, I scurried out of the room 26. I'll be quick, I told Og. Boing, boing, Og chimed. As soon as I slid under the door of room 12, Gigi said, Is that you, Humphrey? Yes, here I am, I squeaked as I rushed toward her table. I swung up to her tabletop and noticed that she was asking the way she usually did. What's new? I asked. Yesterday a boy told me I was his best friend, she squeaked in her soft voice. And today a girl said she loves me. That is unsqueakably wonderful, I said. That's why being a classroom pet is the best job in the world. Now I understand, she said. Thank you for encouraging me. Anytime I said, it was getting dark outside. I've got to go back, I told Gigi, but I'll see you soon. When I returned, I told Og. Now Gigi loves being a classroom pet. Boing, boing, Og replied. I knew he loved being a classroom pet too, especially in room 26. I worked on my story even though I knew no one else would ever read it. Still, it was exciting to get my ideas down on paper. On Thursday morning, I overheard Joey talking to Mrs. Brisbane. So what did your mom say? Our teacher asked him. Joey looked so disappointed. She said this isn't a good week. That's what she says every week. I don't think I'll ever get a turn. Your mother is very busy, but I have an idea, our teacher said. Rosie said she could bring Humphrey home this weekend. Don't you live on her street? Joey nodded. It's her first time taking Humphrey home, Mrs. Brisbane said. Maybe you could go to her house and help her out. Joey shrugged. I guess I could do that. That afternoon, I overheard Mrs. Brisbane talking to Rolling Rosie. I was wondering if you'd like to invite Joey to come over this weekend, Mrs. Brisbane said. He hasn't been able to take Humphrey home and he knows a lot about hamsters. Sure, Rosie said. I'd like that. He lives just down the street. Mrs. Brisbane hesitated. And maybe you could help Joey with his writing. He has wonderful ideas, but he has trouble getting them down on paper. You're doing a great job, so maybe, Rosie nodded. Yes, I'll do it. But don't let him think you don't like what he's written, Mrs. Brisbane said. Rosie shook her head. No, I'll just cheer him on like you always do. Thank you, Rosie, Mrs. Brisbane told her with a smile. On Friday, Rosie's dad, she called him Papa, came to pick us up. So, Humphrey, I hope you know what you're getting into coming to our house, Papa said. It's a pretty busy place. I know I'll like it, I said. When we got there, I met her younger brother and sister, Diego and Elena, and Rosie's mom, she called her Mama, was very friendly. Rosie is in charge of Humphrey, she told Diego and Elena. Don't touch the cage or do anything else without asking her first. She is a wise mama. On Saturday, Mama went to the store. When the doorbell rang, Rosie rolled to the door as her father opened it. Joey was standing there holding a skateboard. Come on in, Papa said in his booming voice. Here's Humphrey, she said as she rolled her chair in my direction. I wanted you to clean out his cage. I could use your help. Joey leaned down and put his face to mine. Hey, Hump, he said. How's it going? Great, 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 I squeaked. Make yourself at home, Papa said. Mi casa es su casa. Thanks, Joey, and putting his skateboard back and backpack on the floor next to the table. I'm glad you remembered your skateboard, Rosie said. Why do you ask me to bring it? Joey asked. And my notebook. Rosie's eyes were sparkling. The skateboard because it's nice outside, and the notebook because, well, you'll see. Just then, Diego chased Elena through the room. Whoa, Rosie's father said. Stop and say hello to Joey. Hi, Joey, Diego said. Elena giggled. Hi, Joey said. Now you're it, Diego said to Elena, she chased him out of the room, squealing with laughter. Papa shook his head. Those two. Do you have brothers and sisters? Joey shook his head. No, it's just me and my dog Skipper. Thinking about Skipper made me glad I didn't get to go to Joey's house after all. Rosie and Joey got busy cleaning my cage with Papa's help. First, Rosie took me out of the cage. She held me in one hand and gently stroked my back with one finger. It felt like a soft breeze on my fur, and I shivered with delight. Rosie put me in my hamster ball and set me on the floor. When I started to roll, Papa chuckled. Look at him go. They put my bedding in a bag and cleaned almost everything in my cage with warm, soapy water. I was happy, happy, happy. They didn't move my mirror and find my notebook. I don't think warm, soapy water would do it much good. I was glad they didn't wash me in warm, soapy water, too. Hamsters should never get wet. When everything was dry, Rosie filled the base of my cage with fresh bedding. She remembered to mix a little of my old bedding in with it before Joey slid it back into place. Then they put all my things back, too. Papa filled my water bottle and Joey put some food in my dish. Humphrey, I think it's time to move you back into your house, Rosie said. I sniffed here, I sniffed there. It smelled fresh and familiar all at the same time. I was so happy I hopped on my wheel and started spinning. Joey and Rosie went off to wash their hands again. When they came back, they watched me. How's your story coming along, Rosie asked. Joey shrugged. Not so great. I sure can't write like Cameron Cole in his great dragon story. Mrs. Brisbane wants me to make more descriptive, but I don't know what to write. How about you? I don't know, Rosie said. I think mine's going well. Want to hear it? Joey wanted to hear it, and so did I. One day I turned into a graceful bird and rose up out of my chair high into the air, she began. Against the blue sky, I felt the wind in my feathers and saw the green earth below. As fast as my wings could carry me, I flew above the Nile River and then to the Egyptian desert, where the great pyramids and the great Sphinx stand. I landed right on top of the statue of the Sphinx, which has the body of a lion but a human head. I looked down at the statue and said, I'm sorry for you, Sphinx. You are stuck in the sand and can't travel, but I have wings and I can fly. For a moment, I felt like a bird landing on the Sphinx. That's really good, Joey said. That's great. Mine is nothing like that. Would you like to read it? Rosie asked. Maybe I could help. I don't think anything would help me, he said. I don't have an imagination. Rosie smiled. Everybody has an imagination. Come on, read it to me. Joey slowly opened his backpack and took out his notebook. I'll read it, he said, but it's no good. I hoped he was wrong. Joey began to read. I flew like a hawk to Africa and saw animals in the wild. I saw elephants, giraffes, lions, rhinos, and monkeys. I especially liked the elephants. They were amazing. He lowered his notebook. That's it. Pretty bad, isn't it? Rosie shook her head. It's not bad. You just need to put some zing into it. Zing? What's that? Joey asked. I'd never heard of zing either, but I thought my writing could use some. It's like cooking dinner, Rosie explained. Mama puts in the meat and the potatoes and the vegetables and then spices them up. Pepper, salt, garlic, hot sauce, that's the zing. I don't know about Joey, but I was suddenly hungry. I don't get it, he said. Can you show me? Rosie thought for a moment. Well, you told me what you saw, but you need to make me see it too. Oh, I can see it, Joey said. I see a monkey in a tree. Doing what? Rosie asked. Joey was silent for a long time. A little too long, I thought. I knew what monkeys did. I saw them in a video in the library. Sometimes at night, I'd sneak into the library to read and watch videos. I scrambled up to the side of my cage and took a giant leap onto my tree branch. I hung there from one paw and bounced up and down. Squeak, squeak, squeak. I tried to sound like a monkey. Rosie saw me first and giggled. Look, Humphrey's acting like a monkey. Joey leaned in and watched me, so I swung from the branch to my ladder and climbed it to the tippity top of my cage. I hung there by one paw, swinging back and forth. He is like a monkey, swinging from branch to branch, Joey said. He bent over his notebook and started scribbling. Here's the monkey, he said as he held up the page for Rosie to see. I could see it too. It was an unspeakably great drawing of a monkey swinging from tree to tree. Rosie's eyes opened wide. That's great. I can almost see him moving. Can you write the words to describe it? Joey thought for a bit and then he wrote, The playful monkeys swing from branch to branch. Rosie clapped her hands. What else would you see? Joey stared at the page and then he said, What about a lion? Oh dear, hamsters aren't like lions at all, but I thought about the video. I raced up to the side of the cage, faced Joey and said, Roar! I tried my best, but I know it sounded like a great big squeak. Ha ha, Joey laughed. Humphrey's roaring like a lion, and he started scribbling again. Humphrey's so funny, it's like he understands you, Rosie said. When he showed Rosie the drawing, she clapped her hands again. You're a great artist, she said. Can you describe what you drew? Joey thought for a long time, but then he wrote something down. Joey stared at his notebook again. Maybe there would be a rhino? Rhino, I squeaked. I've got it. I scurried to one side of my cage and then lowered my head and ran as fast as I could to the other side of the cage. Charge, I squeaked. Joey chuckled and quickly wrote something down. What about elephants and giraffes? Rosie asked. Small furry hamsters have nothing in common with elephants and giraffes. I was thinking about how to help Joey, but it turns out he didn't need my help. I know what to do, he said as he wrote. Whew, that was a huge, huge, huge relief. Joey wrote and wrote and wrote some more. At last he was finished. How's this? He asked. Then he read from his notebook. With the eyes and the speed of a hawk, I flew to Africa and saw amazing animals in the wild. I watched the playful monkeys swinging from branch to branch. Then I saw a mighty lion and heard of his powerful roar. From a safe place, I watched a rhino charge with its great sharp horn and a giraffe eating leaves from the top of a tree. My favorite part was seeing elephants in the wild and hearing their loud trumpeting. I decided to stay in Africa and never come back. Rosie clapped loudly. That was great. It has loads of zing. I couldn't clap my paws, but I squeaked. Good job, Joey, at the top of my tiny lungs. Just one thing, Rosie said. I think you need a descriptive word in front of hawk. Mrs. Brisbane asked for that. Oh, Joey said, how do you spell magnificent? Rosie helped him out and Joey wrote it down. Tomorrow I'm going to illustrate the whole thing, he said. That's part of the fun. But both of them were smiling happily. I think I was smiling too. What do we do next? Joey asked. I don't have to be home for a while. Before I knew it, we were all heading outside. I was in my hamster ball, sitting on Rosie's lap. Joey pulled his helmet and knee pads out of his backpack, and he followed with his skateboard. There were orange cones down the middle of Rosie's driveway, but they weren't in a straight line. It's an obstacle course, Rosie said. You can try it on your skateboard. I'll try it in my wheelchair, and Humphrey can try it in his hamster ball. Great, Joey sounded really excited. Great, I squeaked, because I love, love, love obstacle courses. First, Joey zoomed down the driveway, weaving between the orange cones. And at the very end, he managed to do a wheelie, which means the front wheels of the skateboard lifted up off the ground. Way to go, Rosie gave Joey a high five. Her turn was next. Rosie wheeled down the cones without knocking any of them over, just like Joey. She may not have wings, but she made that wheelchair fly. And just like Joey, she managed to pop a wheelie on the rear wheels of her chair. That was amazing, Joey said, giving Rosie a high five. Now it's Humphrey's turn. Joey picked up my hamster ball and set me at the end of the driveway. Go, Humphrey, Rosie and Joey shouted. I think a skateboard and a wheelchair are easier to control than a hamster ball. I managed to get around the first cone, but I got stuck when I ran into the second cone. That's okay, Humphrey, Joey said as he moved my hamster ball away from the cone. I decided to forget about the cones. I started running in a straight line. My hamster ball picked up speed. That's the way, Humphrey, I heard Rosie shout. Then I heard something else. He's going to roll into the street, Rosie shrieked. Eek, I shouted. I don't think anyone could hear me from inside the hamster ball. I heard rattle, rattle, rattle coming up behind me, and the hamster ball came to a sudden stop. It's okay, Humphrey, Joey said. You're safe. Joey had skateboarded down the driveway and stopped me just in time. I hate to think what might have happened if I ended up in the street. Thanks, Joey, I said. Thanks, Joey, Rosie said as she wheeled her chair up next to us. Joey picked me up and handed the hamster ball to Rosie. She opened the top and smiled at me. You did a great job, Humphrey, she said, but you didn't pop a wheelie. How could I have? My hamster ball has no wheels. But it was still a great day. I was positively happy that Joey's story was better, and Joey and Rosie had tons more fun making up new obstacle courses using their imaginations. Enjoy the rest of the book, everyone.